What would it mean to meet an alien? Presumably, it would mean to meet a living being with a certain level of intelligence, like us, the ability to think and reason. Perhaps it would even mean a living being with the same kind of inner world that we have, a subjective conscious experience which accompanies our perceptions of the world. It would also mean that we weren't related, a living being which has evolved and adapted to entirely different conditions than we have. Their minds would be an independent experiment on behalf of nature. So far as we know, no such aliens exist. However, there is a living being that comes close. It doesn't live on another planet, but rather in the oceans of our own planet Earth. This living being is the octopus, and it's the closest being to having an alien mind. The last common ancestor between humans and octopuses existed about 600 million years ago. It was probably some kind of small, flattened worm, only a few millimeters in length. However, as evolution took its course, this creature split into two different species. They were only a little different from each other at first. But as time moved on into the hundreds, thousands, and millions of years later, these two different species would form the basis of two enormous branches of the evolutionary tree. At the end of one branch is us, and at the end of the other branch is the closest thing we have to a living, breathing alien. The philosopher Peter Godfrey-Smith, whose excellent book is the source of most of the information in this video, describes it as follows. Cephalopods are an island of mental complexity in the sea of invertebrate animals. Because our most recent common ancestor was so simple and lies so far back, cephalopods are an independent experiment in the evolution of large brains and complex behavior. If we can make contact with cephalopods as sentient beings, it's not because of a shared history, not because of kinship, but because evolution built minds twice over. This is probably the closest we will come to meeting an intelligent alien. Because we share a common ancestor, there are some similarities between humans and octopuses. To start, both humans and octopuses have eyes with lenses that focus light onto the retina. We also both have hearts, except octopuses have 3 of them. In addition, their blood is a blue-green color, since they have copper in their blood instead of iron. So far, so familiar. However, the differences are striking. Humans have a central brain to coordinate sensing and acting, but octopuses have a rather different setup. Octopuses have about 500 million neurons, compared with the 100 billion neurons that humans have, but most of these neurons aren't located within the central brain. In fact, most of them are concentrated in little knots called ganglia, distributed across the body. Each of their arms has its own fair share of neurons, which allows them to act semi-autonomously. As Godfrey-Smith writes, in an octopus, the majority of the neurons are in the arms themselves, nearly twice as many as in the central brain. The arms have their own sensors and controllers. They have not only the sense of touch, but also the capacity to sense chemicals, to smell or taste. Each sucker on an octopus's arm may have 10,000 neurons to handle taste and touch. Even an arm that has been surgically removed can perform various basic motions, like reaching and grasping. This on its own is so bizarrely different from our own nervous systems that it literally boggles the mind. But it's not the only incredible feature of the octopus. One of the most well-known features of the octopus is its ability to blend in seamlessly with its environment. This is thanks to several color-changing control devices called chromatophores, iridophores, and leucophores. These devices control which colors are shown on the octopus's skin, and also manipulate and reflect light from the outside. However, what's less well known is that the octopus does all this while being colorblind. The octopus only has one kind of photoreceptor in its eyes, which means that while it can sense light levels, it can't differentiate the wavelengths into different colors. This makes its color-changing abilities even more remarkable, but it gets crazier still. As it turns out, the skin of the octopus itself is sensitive to light, and this has some bizarre implications. Scientists still don't fully know how this light-sensitive skin works, but there are two possibilities. One is that the light-sensitive skin passes this information to the central brain, which means that the octopus effectively sees from all over its body. The other is that this information is not passed on, and instead, each arm keeps this information to itself. It's difficult to imagine this as seeing, but it's difficult to imagine it as anything at all. It's clear that the skin is a mode of perception for the octopus, but it's so different to human perception that there's little reason to suppose it's anything like the human experience of seeing the world. And yet, despite its alien biology, there's something of ourselves we can recognize in the octopus. Godfrey-Smith describes several encounters with octopuses where they seem to display an impressive level of intelligence. Octopuses will press themselves against the glass of their tanks to watch their experimenters milling around. If they take a dislike to the experimenters, they'll sometimes shoot jets of water at them. One octopus even looked the experimenter dead in the eyes as it emptied its food down the drain. Octopuses seem human in so many ways. So why is it so difficult for us to understand what it's like to be one? In 1974, the philosopher Thomas Nagel wrote probably one of the most influential philosophy papers of all time, called "What Is It Like to Be a Bat?" In the paper, Nagel makes the argument that we could never possibly understand what it's like inside the mind of a bat. Bats perceive the world via sonar or echolocation. They send out shrieks from their mouth or nose, and the echoes which hit their ears allow them to determine the size, shape, and distance of the objects around them. This is comparable to vision in humans, but the perceptual systems are so different in either case that it's impossible for us to imagine what it's like to be a bat. Even if a bat were to explain all the biological processes involved in echolocation, there would still be some remainder, the what it's likeness of the experience, which we can never understand. Nagel writes, "Bats, although more closely related to us than wasps or flounders, nevertheless present a range of activity and a sensory apparatus so different from ours that the problem I want to pose is exceptionally vivid, though it certainly could be raised with other species. Even without the benefit of philosophical reflection, anyone who's spent some time in an enclosed space with an excited bat knows what it is to encounter a fundamentally alien form of life. Bear in mind, the last common ancestor between humans and bats was less than 100 million years ago, a full 500 million years later than that between humans and octopuses. If there ever were an alien form of life, octopuses are a much better candidate than bats. Perhaps octopuses don't have a sense of self like humans have. Perhaps their sense of self is distributed across their whole bodies, fractured into different pieces, which sometimes act together, but other times act independently, one arm completely unaware of what the others are doing. Perhaps there's even something that it's like to be an octopus arm, in addition to and separate from the whole octopus. the existence of the octopus turns the hard problem of consciousness into the really bloody hard problem of consciousness. What could it possibly be like to have a brain that's distributed across the whole body, where the arms have the majority share of the neurons and their own autonomous existence separate from the central brain? A brain which, as a matter of fact, has the octopus's throat running through it. The simple fact is that we can never know. There seems to be an irreducible what-it's likeness to subjective conscious experience that no amount of science can overcome. The case of the octopus makes this glaringly apparent. We tend to approach the animal world with a kind of anthropocentrism. It's hard not to. Humans are the only living beings we know about that have minds, and so we tend to place a lot of emphasis on the distinctive human hallmarks that we find in other living beings. That itself is not a problem, and often makes for a decent place to start the search for mindedness. The problem comes when we consider the human mind as the only way to be minded. The existence of the octopus should be enough to disillusion us of that idea. The octopus is an intelligent being, one clearly capable of complex reasoning and problem solving, and yet its nervous system couldn't be more different from ours. This doesn't mean that the octopus doesn't have a mind, but rather it shows us a different way that consciousness could be constituted, a different point on the three-dimensional space that is all the possible forms of consciousness that could ever exist. What is it like to be one of these alien minds? Perhaps we will never know, but as with any mystery, we should approach it with compassion and humility. At the end of the day, we don't even know what it takes for humans to have minds and the rich inner worlds they enable, let alone a living being which has been on an entirely different evolutionary course than we have. It's almost impossible to doubt that octopuses are intelligent beings with a subjective conscious experience of their worlds, but what that could be like is far beyond the reach of our human imagination. Perhaps, most of all, the existence of such alien minds are a reminder. Just because a living being is totally different from a human, that doesn't mean that it doesn't have a mind, or, more importantly, that it doesn't feel pain. Until recently, octopuses were not included in most animal welfare laws because they're invertebrates. This has now started to change, but it should still make us think. The existence of the octopus is a testament to the massive diversity of minds alien to our own. We should let them remain alien and not measure them with human standards. Thank you very much for watching, peace and love, and I'll see you in the next video.